I was sharing with folks in the first hour of the program that I was watching a video that was sent to me, and it deals with some future land use issues in Idaho. And of course, now many people in the bureaucracy are treating us as if human beings are an invasive species. And it really is alarming for people who actually hunt and fish, ranch, or even live in some of the most rural areas of the Mountain West. We're joined this morning on the program. I'll call him a concerned citizen. Many of you are familiar with Eric Parker. I know the bureaucrats are. They don't necessarily like him, but a great many people who live in this part of the country respect people who take a strong stand for what they consider to be basic liberties, basic rights that are granted to them by God. And Eric is today in Boise, where he, as a concerned citizen, is making an effort to speak with legislators on a number of issues. But we're talking, as I say, land use this morning. And Eric, first of all, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Bill.
Hey, right off the top, this video you sent me, and this woman was explaining a little bit about, I think that the easel behind her said something called Alternative C, which sounds like somebody would give put a government name or very Orwellian name across something. But as she's trying to explain the map behind her, she's talking a bit about various closures and areas where it appears simply no human being will be allowed to go in Idaho. What exactly are they up to here?
So, a little background. A few years ago, they were attempting to turn the Oahe Mountain area into another national monument. That fell through, and now the bureaucracies, being the bureaucracies, they're going to get their way any way they can. So, what they've done now is introduced what they're calling their travel plan, and they had four of those boards: Plan A, Alternative A, B, C, and now Alternative A is exactly how it is right now. No closures, no interference at all, and then they steadily got to more and more closures through B, C, and D. And what they're basically doing is closing the land off, and it's as simple as that. They do it through access, motorized vehicle access, four-wheeler access, and they have these little meetings, and they ask for public input to kind of cover their bases. And what we were told is if we have any specific concerns or justification for not closing a specific section, then we can give them our comment and they will consider it. I've been doing this a little while. They seem to do it every fall. They introduce a new travel plan and end up closing off some of our access. The BLM's doing it down here in the Oahe area, and the U.S. Forest Service is doing it up around where I live in the Boulder White Clouds Chalice area. So we decided to go over there and live stream and kind of ask them some questions and see if we couldn't get any of them on the record. And that's the video you saw.
Well, when you mentioned this too, and somebody brought this up to me earlier this morning. You'll have the Forest Service, they'll be holding a meeting. The BLM has its own plan. They almost have us whipsawed because we don't really know. Each individual bureaucracy is running its own game, if you will. And as the public, we have a tough time following it all. You don't know who to address or where to go, how you should put together any sort of response.
And the general, Joe Q public, has no idea until he decides he wants to go camping out there in the Oahes or up in the Boulder White Clouds, and he wants to go to the place his dad brought him. And he goes and he's driving down the road, and all of a sudden there's a mountain of rocks in the road, and it says closed to motorized vehicle or to four-wheeler or even to hiking. They give us all sorts of excuses as why it needs to be done. One of the things I caught on the video was they're seasonal closings. And when I first heard that, I thought, okay, so we're just talking, winter access, muddy roads, maybe. But no, it's from January 1st to July 31st.
Wow.
Due to the eagle nest. Now, I want to take care of our endangered species and take care of our nature as much as the next guy. I'm an avid hunter, and I enjoy our public lands. The problem is they're not ours anymore. And what they're using is any means necessary to close it down. They say that any road within a half a mile of an eagle's nest is going to be closed for that time period, which is just asinine. It makes no sense. These eagles nest right on the highway, and they never fly away from their chicks. But they undermine the science that people put out, and by using it to their own agenda. They said there was no endangered species out there, but they said there was some endangered plants. Things like this. So either they're going to use this 2009 law, which says that they have the authority to do this, or they're going to use the Taylor Grazing Act, or they're going to find some reason to close us out. And then when we go and ask why, they want us to justify why we want to keep it open. And
Wow.
and that's the problem I see is they need to justify to us why they want to close it. And when we ask, the closest I got to a legitimate answer was better management of natural resources.
Well,
go ahead.
A question might be, what do we pay taxes for then if we can't ever walk back into one of these places again?
Well, yeah, and the thing that really bothers me is, we get painted in the media as only caring about the ranchers or the miners or the loggers, and that's really not true. The ranchers, the miners, and the loggers have been yelling about this for a long time, and they've been kind of in the crosshairs for a long time because they claim their rights in these lands. And now that they've kind of pushed all of them out, they have to push out the general use people, your hunters, your fishers, your hikers. At this meeting there was four-wheeler clubs and 4x4 clubs and hunters and everybody who likes to use the public lands. They're closing access to everybody, and we're over here standing on the wall trying to inform people and let them know that this is what was coming and has been coming. And the media just says, oh, well, you want to sell off all the land to private interests, and you want the state to take the land and sell it off to private interests. And that's not true. That's not necessarily true. When we speak of miners and we speak of the ranchers, we're talking about the small miner who has a claim out there in the Owaihees, and now he can't get to it. There was a section on there with private property, and they were asked, the BLM were asked, what about this section of private property? And he was quick to say, well, we can't do anything with that. And my guy, he said, no, that's not what I'm talking about. You can't close the roads on private property. We understand that, but you can close the roads to private property. And now, in the case of endangered species, the endangered species is going to trump this the mining claim, and it makes no sense. And they are closing the access off to private property and the people that have the rights out there, whether it's the water rights, the mining rights, the ranching, and they've been doing it for a long time. And now they're at the point where they're closing out the general public from use. The fact is we don't have public land. We have the idea of public lands that's sold to us, a bill of goods, and it's not true.
I want to point out quickly for people who may be just tuning in, Eric Parker, a political activist, joining us this morning and explaining to us what may be going on at the Boulder White Clouds area where they will be treating human beings as invasive species. It's coming up on 9/16. We're at 24. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Eric, what worries me is if they do this, 3 years from now, they'll say, gee, this has worked so well, we're now going to do it in several other ranges. I know there's a similar plan in the Cascades. They'll come to southern Idaho. There's really no end to what they could do.
Well, when you look at this thing from 50 to 100 yards back, you see it's been going on for a while. They have steadily been closing off access or attempting to close off access, and the use of this land, whether that be rights or claims and stuff like that, or just general use, going out there to camp, going out there to hike, four-wheeling and stuff. And it's been steadily going on, and it goes on all over the country. My concern's Idaho, but it's definitely a plan and an agenda to close off access. Some people will tell you, this is Agenda 21. They want to control the lands and stuff. All I know is how much money the BLM made, in 2014, and I know that over in Nevada, when they close off the access and they close off the grazing permits and everything else, they start piecing it out and renting it out to fracking companies. So the small miner who's going to go out there and mine, or the small logger or rancher, he has no rights, but they're going to take control of it and then piece it out to big corporations and rent it out and let them utilize our natural resources. These are the state's natural resources, not the federal natural resources. And, our state goes more and more broke while these bureaucracies, these top-heavy bureaucracies, just keep making more and more money.
I gotta ask you, Eric, can you take a quick telephone call or two?
Sure.
We've got a break coming up in about 2 minutes, and so if you can stick around following the break as well, we can squeeze some telephone callers in before 9:30 or so. But you referenced the fact that these are state resources and that they're being parceled out to the big players, and I think that answers a lot of questions. We've got a caller. Caller, you're up next. It's 9:18. You're on the air with Eric Parker on KLIX. Go ahead.
Well, I'm very aware of what he's talking about. I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and he was on a board with the Forest Service, and it was about Idaho. And there was 8 Californians on the board, 2 Massachusetts-born people, and 2 Idaho guys. And I said, well, how the hell is that fair? This is Idaho. And he says, well, that's just the way it is, and nobody knows about it. And the rest of us are just oblivious, and they just get their way. And so, the mismanagement of our forests, the lack of grazing, it's burning our forests to the ground, and they don't care. They just want to perpetuate their idealism and keep us off the land. I'll hang up.
Well, I want to thank you for the call. Eric, we've got about 30 seconds before the break, but we can pick this up on the other side. He makes a good point, though. You've got a lot of people who are making judgments who have nothing to do with Idaho and maybe have never even seen it.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of these people that work for the BLM just moved here, and he made a really good point about the burning that I'd like to get to on the other side as well.
All right, well, hold on. We want to point out we're joined this morning by political activist Eric Parker, and, of course, he's an Idaho resident, joining us this morning, and we're talking about some of the latest land grab attempts by the agencies, several agencies of the federal government, that little shell game they play between agencies and how that works. We've got more coming up in just a couple of minutes. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're at 27, on our way possibly today into the low 40s. Our guest is political activist Eric Parker, and he's going to be with us a few more minutes this morning on Top Story. We're at 25. It's 9:22. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And we're really talking about what would amount to a land seizure by federal bureaucrats where they would strictly limit your access to the land in Idaho, as well as they're planning this in several other states, we should point out as well. Eric, the caller referenced burning, and you mentioned after the call that you had some thoughts on that, what he was talking about as well, right?
Yeah. So what happens is they mismanage these lands. They create basically tinder boxes, and it burns. And we've seen this steadily get worse and worse and worse. After it burns is what I want to talk about. After it burns, that's just another way that they close us out. The Idaho 3% went to a meeting in Prairie a few years back, and it was after the big fires out there. And what they did was say, okay, all you ranchers with your grazing permits and stuff, we're going to have to close down access, and we're going to have to close down grazing all over this area because it burned. And if you stood in the middle of the road and looked, one side had been burned and one side hadn't, and there was absolutely no difference. The grass, this is how they managed the land back in the day. You had prescribed burns, and it would better the land. for the use of the grazing and stuff. So the signs make no sense. But my point is, it's just another way that they close off the access. It gives them another excuse to close off the access. They say, well, it's going to take 7 years to regenerate these trails and whatnot, and we're just going to have to not let you out there. So it really just gives them another reason. So I think they like it.
We've got another caller looking to join us. I just want to mention the telephone number is 208-736-0300. And caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Eric Parker on KLIX. Go ahead.
Good morning. All of this is just right in the pattern and mold of United Nations Agenda 21 to create 50% of the land area is the goal into a game preserve. And so they've got to drive all the farmers and ranchers, the miners, the lumbermen off the land and take away the uses, take away the tax base, and all for this. And the deep state, extends not only to the State Department and other areas. The deep state is right in the bureaucracies, whether it's BLM or the EPA or the Ag Department, doesn't make any difference. But the point is, we've got to get out of the United Nations because these programs are killing this country and have been for, since the 80s at least, when the EPA came online.
On that note, let's get Eric involved here with a response, because I know you said even if you don't, follow Agenda 21, there are still a lot of things to be concerned about here, is what you were mentioning earlier.
Absolutely. And I would agree with the caller. It does all go back to, the United Nations and foreign treaties. But the point I really want to get across today is, that old saying, and I changed it up a little bit, they came for the miners, and I did nothing because I wasn't a miner. And they came for the ranchers, and I did nothing because I wasn't a rancher. And they came for the loggers, and I did nothing because I wasn't a logger. And now they're coming for the general public use. They've already gotten these men and their livelihoods off, and they make a good argument against them, and they've gotten them pretty well pushed off. But now they have to push off the general access. So now we're talking the fishermen, the hunters, the recreational use, all these people. They've turned against the miner and these people that had their rights and their livelihood, and now they're in the crosshairs. And now your general, you can't go out there. You're going to go, like I said, you're going to go out there to that place where your dad took you, and you want to take your kids, and you're going to get there, and there's going to be rocks in the middle of the road. These people, general people, citizens, they don't understand these meetings are going on. They're living their lives, and that's their right. We shouldn't have to stop what we're doing every week or so and go to a meeting and file our comment, and hopefully somebody takes it seriously, which they're not going to. And the point is that it's coming to the point where we're going to all have to come together and really tell them no, thank you. And peacefully, I want to stress that, peacefully gather in these places where they're closing and where they're meeting, and tell them, you know what, we're not going to play your game. We're not going to submit our request, but you're not going to close this stuff down. You're not going to take our rights and our heritage away from us. And that's what we're about at the Idaho 3%.
You wanted to actually give out a web address too, right? So people could follow this up and learn more about it.
Well, it's the easiest. We're building a website right now. The easiest is just to follow us at the Real 3% Idaho on Facebook. That we keep that pretty well going with what we're doing, and that's the easiest way. It's the Real 3%, the number 3 percenters Idaho.
Yeah, that's like a Roman numeral, right? That you use.
On the Facebook page, we just use the 3 because people can find that easier. The number 3.
Probably a good point to keep in mind. So we will keep following this. I hope you can keep us posted, because I know there's going to be a lot of continued interest, because this is like dealing with the Borg from Star Trek. They're just relentless. They keep coming back.
No, they do. Every year they keep coming back, and they get a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. What you saw was the meeting on the Owyhees, and it's coming up here pretty soon. Is going to be the meeting on the Boulder White Clouds through the Forest Service, and anybody listening that uses that land, we got to come together. Whether you're just using it for recreation, whether you use it to hunt, whether you have a small mining claim out there that you're not going to be able to get to or anything else. We really need to get past this whole paradigm of progressive and conservative and everything else. It's all of our land, and we can figure out what to do with it after we tell them that they're not going to close it.
Eric,
we can have all those debates later.
I got to wrap it up, but I thank you for your time this morning, and I wish you luck there today dealing with some of the raptors who serve in the legislature.
Yeah, we need it. We can use all the luck we can get.
All right.
Thanks, Bill.
All right. Take care, sir. Eric Parker joining us this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com, talking about land use issues. One more half hour of the program coming up. Oh, we haven't talked tariffs yet. Maybe we're going to add a couple of things about that in a few minutes.